Hey everyone, Percy here. So I've got some exciting news for you. Initial Audio has dropped a brand new instrument. Now this instrument is called Initial Slice, and today we're going to talk about it.
Supercy.
Alright, Initial Slice by Initial Audio. Now I am going to leave a link in the description. It is going to be an affiliate link, which means that should you be interested, you can use that link. Wouldn't cost you a cent more, but I would get a little commission, which of course would help support me and this channel. By the way, at the moment it is on sale. It's an introductory sale for about 30% off or 34% off, I believe. So should you be interested, now might be the time. Now, once you've downloaded and installed it, it's going to look something like this. Now, at the moment I'm using it as a plugin, but you can also use it as a standalone application. But what is it? So what is Initial Slice? Now, I don't think I will surprise anyone by saying that Initial Slice is basically a slicer. But it is actually also a bit more than that. Okay, now let's take a quick look at the interface. So starting up here, this is the area where we can drag our audio loops to. So let's try that now. I have a loop right here. And automatically, of course, it will slice it up for you based on the slice mode you set up here. And now, of course, these slices are already playable. Now and then here we can edit the sample and the slices. So this part is for the sample. We can have it loop, we can reverse, fade in, fade out, pitch shift, form and shift, and there's also a gate up here. And then here, this part is for the slices. So detune, pitch shift, loop, reverse, and then to the far right we have a gain knob, attack and release. And then down here we can add some effects. Now, as you can see, the slice page, let me call it that, is now routed to effects rack 1. So let's select 1. And then we can add an effect right here. So we have delay, reverb, chorus, clipper, you know, the usual suspects. Now so far it already looks like a pretty decent slicer, but it is still kinda in the basic slice realm, so to speak. So there's nothing so far that really makes it stand out. Now what does make it stand out is, as I mentioned, it's not just a slicer, it's actually quite a bit more. Now as you can see, we are now in the main editor, and now let's move on to the slice sequencer. Now this already is something that you don't see in any slicer, do you? It's actually a built-in sequencer. Now we have a piano roll to the left here. And we can just build a pattern right here. So let's press play and let me just add some notes. Now I'm just adding random notes here, but you get the idea. So we can just build a pattern right here, and we can have up to 4 different patterns. Now that's not all, because next to the slice sequencer we also have a drum sequencer. So we can actually also create a drum sequence, a drum pattern right here, which is pretty insane. Now just like the slice sequencer, we can also have 4 different drum patterns. Now here we have 10 different slots where we can drag in our drum sounds, our drum samples. I will show you how exactly in a minute. Now each of the slots has its own dedicated gain knob, pan knob, pitch knob and reverb knob. And then we can also add each of the slots to the sidechain. So that is pretty nice. Now if you think that having a dedicated slice sequencer and drum sequencer was insane, this thing also has a bass sequencer. Now, this is where you can drag your bass sample to, so like an 808 or something like that. Then here, obviously, we can create the bass melody. Again, we can have up to 4 different patterns. Here we have gain settings, pan, pitch, and fine tuning settings. And then here we have the sidechain. So if we activate this, then any of the drum sounds that were added to the sidechain may cause the bass to duck. So that's really great that that's built in here. Now, and then next to the bass sequencer, we have the playlist. Now, as you can see here, it says slice pattern 1, slice pattern 2, 3, and 4, drum pattern 1, 2, 3, and 4, and bass pattern 1 through 4. Now, let's switch over to song mode, and let's just add a slice pattern over here. Okay, and let's press play. Now you may recognize this. Let's go back to the slice sequencer, pattern 1, and it is actually playing this pattern right here. Now, if I also would have a second pattern and a third and a fourth, let's go back to the playlist. I could also add those variations here. Let's say that I want pattern 2 to start here, pattern 4 to start here, pattern 3 to start here, and I want drum pattern 1 to start here, and then like this, and like this, and then bass pattern 1 here, and there. And you know, this doesn't make any sense probably, but I think you get the idea. We can actually create an entire arrangement right from within here. So all in all, I think you're starting to get the picture here. So what we can do with this, so we can add a sample, a loop. Then we can slice it up whichever way we want. We can create a melody from it. We can add drum sounds and create drum patterns. We can add bass sounds and create a pattern from that. And then we can create an arrangement from all of that. So we can kind of almost create an entire beat right from within this plugin. Well, maybe not an entire beat, but at least something that they themselves at Initial Audio call a beat starter. I don't think I've ever seen that before in a slicer. And by the way, as I mentioned, you can also use it as a standalone application. And, you know, it might even be all you need in some cases. Now, we're not completely done yet because this thing also comes with a decent amount of samples. And the nice thing about it is that each of the samples has also been made into a complete beat or beat starter, to be precise, by one of the contributors, so one of the producers. So let's look at an example now. Now, if you click the name of the sample, only the sample will be loaded. If you click beat right here, the entire thing, so the entire pattern is being loaded. Okay, let's take a look at an example and let's just play it. Okay, let's try something else. Let's see what this has to offer. So that is absolutely very inspirational, having all of those samples and all of those beat starters at your disposal. And of course, you can just change the slice sequence, you can change the bass sequence, change the drum sequence. You can change it up however you wish and kind of make it your own. So yeah, again, it's absolutely very inspirational and very versatile. Okay, now lastly, I promised to also show you how to bring in your drum sounds and bass sounds into Initial Slice. So if we go up here to the Samples tab, then here, down here, you can see a few folders. We have claps, hi-hats, kicks, Okay, let's say we like this kick. Then we can just drag it to any of the slots here and boom, it's now added to the slot. Now the same goes for the bass sounds. So we have an 808 folder here. Okay, let's say we like this bass sound, just drag it in here and it's there. Now you can also bring in your own sounds that you have anywhere on your computer. Just simply drag in the folder that contains them into here, and the sounds in that folder will automatically be added to the sample library in Initial Audio. Okay, so that's how you do that. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the interface of Initial Slice. Okay, so what do I think of Initial Slice? Now, Initial Slice is a slicer, a loop slicer, but obviously it's also kinda a lot more than that. So much so that it almost falls into an entirely different category. It's almost like a DAW, you know, a light version of a DAW. It's not a DAW, but just to illustrate how feature-packed this thing really is. In the end, it is still a slicer. Now, as a slicer, I think it's awesome. You get pretty much all you need for a slicer. The algorithm is spot on, or at least in my experience so far. Haven't had any experiences with glitches or distortion or whatsoever. You know, everything just seems to work very smoothly. And then on top of that, you also get all these other features. Now, especially the addition of the sequencers, very, very useful. Now, of course, in my opinion at least, the slice sequencer is by far the most important one, but it's really great to also have a drum sequencer and a bass sequencer built in. Now I have to say that I do also have a little bit of criticism, let's say some ideas that would make this thing even better than it already is. And it's basically two things. Now first of all, I can play the slices with my MIDI keyboard any which way I like. But I don't seem to be able to do the same with the drum parts. So I can create a drum pattern and then trigger that drum pattern with MIDI, but I don't seem to be able to trigger the individual drum sounds with MIDI. Same is true for the bass, so I can create a bass pattern and then trigger the pattern with my MIDI keyboard, but I'm not able to trigger individual notes on the bass. Now again, this is a slicer, so obviously the slice part, so to speak, is by far the most important part of this instrument. But still, it would be pretty nice to also have a little bit more control over the drum parts and the bass sound with MIDI. Now, and then the other little piece of criticism concerns multi-outs. So Initial Slice doesn't seem to have multiple outputs. Now, of course, it would be great if we would be able to send out the slices, the drums and the bass to separate channels so that we can also edit them individually in our DAW. So those are my little points of criticism. I have to say these were probably born from the fact that Initial Slice is so feature-packed that you kind of become a little bit greedy and you want more and more and more. I think if Initial Slice also had these features, it should at least be nominated for Plugin of the Year. But even as it is now, already, it's absolutely an amazing tool, especially of course for beat makers. It's an amazing slicer, packed with features, very inspirational. I would definitely recommend at least checking it out. Okay, so go take a look, let me know what you think, leave a comment below. For now, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.